Broadcast. Okay. Now you go to my Facebook page, you'll see me there. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are going to be speaking about the stage of Bhava. Just so you know, when you get there, where you are. And you may think, I don't know how relevant it is to understand the stage of Bhava, but Srila Prabhupada, he gave us this information very early on in Krishna consciousness. So he wanted us to understand it, and it's been nicely explained in Shivaram Swami's book called Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, and I'm just bringing it up on my computer, and we're going to read from it. I have to get the chapter on Bhava. He's studied it quite deeply, so I found that his description of it is answers a lot of questions and brings a lot of understanding from different perspectives. One of the things that we had spoken about in previous classes is that in the stage of Bhava, your relationship with Krishna is awakened. Right now I'm in Bangalore, in case you're wondering where I am. I don't know, I'm in the garden. Trying to avoid the sun. I don't know if it's too dark. I should make it lighter. Sorry. If I have an exposure button. So, anyway. So one of the things we had talked about is that when you come to the stage of Bhava, then you realize your relationship with Krishna. It's revealed. And there are some who teach that a relationship comes from outside. It can be given to you through the association of others. Because of their rasa, it infects you. You become attracted to that rasa. And Prabhupada did say that Krishna consciousness is dynamic, so one could change their rasa, but general understanding is that the rasa is inherent. And you may hear something different somewhere, but at least if you study Prabhupada's teachings, you won't hear that it comes from the outside. That it's there inherent within you, and through the process of Krishna consciousness, it comes out. And so everything that we're describing in this class, or we have described in previous classes, are just natural stages that a devotee evolves into in the progress of his devotional service, and so that one's relationship is revealed at a certain stage, and one doesn't have to endeavor in any other way. And how it's revealed? Either by the mercy of Guru or Krishna, or by the mercy of the Chit Shakti when you achieve the stage of Bhava, whatever the case may be. Our understanding is that it's coming from within, it's not coming from without. And so you might hear others talk about it coming from without, but that's not exactly, you won't really find that anywhere in Prabhupada's teachings. So that you execute the process and then you awaken your Krishna consciousness. And so that happy day will come. And we had discussed in the previous class that the reason it's revealed is because you're no longer bound by the modes of nature, but you've entered the Shuddha Sattva, the pure transcendental position. So there everything is revealed, your relationship, Satchidananda, in form of the Ladini, Samvit, and Sandini potencies, now control your life. And then we had mentioned that Prabhupada said, we're always controlled either by external energy or Krishna's internal energy. So the internal energy reveals our relationship. The external energy turns us away from Krishna. And the external energy, it's just there for those who want to turn away from Krishna. It provides them facility to enjoy because they wanted to enjoy, and it also supports them in staying away from Krishna, because that's basically what's going on here in the material world is we're staying away from Krishna. So the material energy actually supports that, and it creates the impetus. It doesn't seem fair, but the material energy creates the impetus to stay away from Krishna. As strange as that sounds. But because we want to stay away from Krishna, there has to be, it's our natural position to be Krishna conscious, so there has to be some energy that works against us. If I remember my relationship with Krishna, then how will I be able to enjoy the material world? It will be difficult. It's antagonistic. So material energy causes us to forget our relationship with Krishna. It causes us to think that we're the center. Because if I think that I'm the center, if I think that I can enjoy, and I forget my relationship with Krishna, or I relegate my relationship to Krishna being my servant rather than me being his servant, then I can fall under the illusion that I can be happy and enjoy in this world. And so I need to be covered in order to do that. Just like, for example, I sometimes give the example that, let's say you're eating some food and it's really unhealthy. But you really enjoy it. It's one of your favorite preparations. And if I explain to you in detail how unhealthy it is, to the point where it might even make you sick to think about eating it, then you'll never be able to enjoy that. And if you really enjoy that food, if I start to tell you how bad it is, you might say something like, don't tell me how bad it is, because this is my favorite food. I love it and I want to enjoy it, so I don't want you telling me how bad it is. Can you relate to that? So that's the way the modes of nature work. I really don't want to learn that I'm not the enjoyer, I'm not the controller. I really don't want to think about the fact that I'm temporary. I don't want to hear that I'm not the center of the world. I don't want to hear that life will only give me frustration. I don't want to hear any of these things, because if I hear them, how will I enjoy? I have to forget those things. And when I forget those things, then I can enjoy. Therefore, the three modes of nature cause us to forget, and in that forgetfulness, then we can enjoy. If you look at material enjoyment, you will see that a lot of material enjoyment evolves around forgetting. Like being drunk, so being drunk is a way to become happy, but your happiness is in forgetting, you're troubled. So as long as you can forget, you're happy. But if you remember, you won't be happy. So material energy is causing us to forget our spiritual identity and causing us to forget all the things that are in Bhagavad Gita. Just like, for example, let's say you studied Bhagavad Gita and you've been a devotee and you're practicing Krishna consciousness. You're teaching Krishna consciousness to others, you're giving classes, and you're basically finding happiness in devotional service. And then one day you leave Krishna consciousness and everyone is bewildered at how could such a happy and learned devotee leave Krishna consciousness. And the explanation is forget that what he knew or what she knew has been forgotten, overcome by the desire to enjoy. Because if I want to enjoy, I can't remember what Krishna said, because it rains, Krishna's instructions, so to speak, rain on my parade. I can't have a parade of Maya if the teachings of Krishna are blasting in my ear. So if someone wants to enjoy the material world, then Krishna will cover them so they forget everything they've learned about Krishna consciousness. And in that state, they can be under the illusion that they can be happy, because that's what they want. So because that's what they want, that's what Krishna gives. So in the stage of bhava, everything is unveiled. There's no illusion. Your relationship with Krishna is fully manifest. So that's the reward. So let's read. I just have to look to see where we left off last time. Actually, I don't remember, because I marked it in the book, and now I'm reading on my computer. So let's read a little. It's always good to read. Never hurts to read it over, but if I realize we've read this and I've explained all these things well, then I'll just go ahead. Love of Godhead, prema, is the mature fruit of devotional service in practice. Prema first appears in an immature form as ecstatic devotional service. Ecstatic devotional service means bhava. So bhava is the, as it said here, it's the immature, it's the green mango stage of love of Krishna. Ecstatic devotion, also known as the permanent mood of affection, sthāyi bhav, is the reawakening of the devotee's dormant relationship with Krishna. So sthāyi means permanent, bhav means emotion, or in this case, it means relationship. So sthāyi bhav means one of the 5 relationships. So if you say, what's your sthāyi bhav? Means, is it shanta dasya, vatsalya, sakya vatsalya, or madhurya? The relationship may be as an admirer, servant, friend, parent, parental figure, or conjugal lover. As their love for Krishna develops, so do the moods through which devotees convey their affection. Mixed with other transcendental ingredients, the moods become increasingly tasty and eventually assume their ripened form as the transcendental loving mellows rasa. So the ripened form is prema, and the unripened form is bhava. So, but you could even say the unripened form of bhava is rati, and the unripened form of rati is ruchi, and the unripened form of ruchi is nishta. So this basically what we've been discussing is how each stage leads into the next as it matures. So the maturing stage then becomes the beginning stage of the next level. In ecstatic devotion, a higher dimension of cultivation becomes manifest. The cultivation of the moods of ecstasy, and in other words, you don't see these moods in the stage of asakti, because the attachment is not intense enough to produce ecstasy. You might see some signs of this, but not fully manifest. Still, each stage is a further manifestation of bhava, but the full manifestation comes in this stage. And so you don't see these external symptoms, bodily symptoms, what we call ecstatic symptoms, or sattvika bhav. You don't see them in asakti, or less, or you may see them minutely. But the way Shastra explains it, that they fully manifest in the stage of bhava. In ecstatic devotion, a higher dimension of cultivation becomes manifest, the cultivation of the moods of ecstasy, bhava. The initial stages of devotional practice do not feature this kind of effort, although in later stages of spontaneous practice, devotees aspire for such moods. So you'll see, for example, songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he's saying, when will that day come when I become mad, running on the bank of the Ganga, chanting, Gauranga. So madness is actually a sign of ecstasy. And so devotees, as we get to higher stages, will aspire, genuinely aspire for these ecstatic symptoms. Not in the mood to enjoy them, but as manifestations of a higher stage of Krishna consciousness. And, the idea being that you could say madness is something that exists in the material world, and it's something that exists in the spiritual world. So I become mad for this woman, I become mad for this man, I become mad for money. So the devotee is saying, when will I become mad for the holy name? Because if we don't become mad for the holy name, then we're going to become mad for something else. So that desire to experience these ecstatic symptoms develops as we come to higher stages of bhakti. Before we're experiencing them, as you reach higher stages, as you become free from material attachment, naturally the hankering for something spiritual becomes stronger. That's what's being said. The aspiration becomes realized only with the sprouting of love, which provides the spiritual substance with which to cultivate inner sentiment. So the ecstasies are what's being explained here. You might wonder, well, what do the ecstasies do? Why have them? Don't they get in the way? But actually these ecstasies cultivate the rasa. They're part of the, that's the best way I can say it for now, is that these sentiments, these ecstatic emotions, are part of the rasa, and it's how the rasa is cultivated. And that's what's being said here. The ecstasies provide the spiritual substance with which to cultivate inner sentiments. At this stage, either devotees purposefully cultivate such sentiments with the 9 limbs of devotion, or love itself cultivates them through different stimuli. Advanced purposeful cultivation by meditative chanting of the holy name is called Nam Bhajan. Later chapters explain this more. In other words, the ecstatic feelings are cultivated either by doing your bhajan or by things which stimulate your Krishna consciousness, like hearing or seeing a picture can stimulate the ecstasy, so it can come from something that you've just heard, or you just see a picture, or the example, you see a dark sky and it reminds you of Krishna, and then you become ecstatic. Or maybe you see a little baby, it reminds you of Krishna. These are stimuluses that come from outside, or the stimulus of doing your bhajan. At the level of devotional service and practice, advancement is gradual because devotees are still tied to the material world. A person trying to advance at this stage is like a man whose hands are bound with rope and is trying to free himself. When devotees serve with ecstatic emotion, however, they are on the spiritual platform. The same chanting and hearing is then free from material encumbrance and is fully potent. Endeavors at this stage give rapid results, propelling devotees toward love of God. Rupa Goswami, basically what's saying, it's like, you've seen this materially, that when you achieve a certain level of success, then from that level your success expands many, many times greater, because you've kind of reached a threshold. And when you get over that threshold, you're so good at something that with your practice of it or with your execution of it, you become exceedingly accomplished. Whereas when you were practicing, the improvements were very incremental. But when you reach a certain level of proficiency, then it's like when you advance in devotional service, then when you chant or when you study, you get so much more out of it than you did when you were a younger devotee, because you're not encumbered by the modes of nature. So there's less in the way. So that's what's being said here. That once you come to the stage of bhava, then you're free from all the things that were blocking you. And so while we're still in the modes of nature, advancement is slower, because it's kind of like you take 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're always dealing with the modes of nature as you experience. One day you're doing well, one day you're not doing well. So imagine one day you're doing well, the next day better, the next day better, the next day excellent, more excellent. There's no going back. There's nothing inhibiting you. So in material consciousness or in lower stages of Krishna consciousness, we're working against these forces of the modes of nature that we're so attracted to. So advancement is much slower because we're carrying a lot of weight. When we're transcendental, there's no weight. Everything is just pushing us. Nothing's pushing us down, it's pushing us up. So that's, at that point, it's clear, pretty much clear sailing, and sailing at a very high speed. So here's the verse that explains that. Shuddha sattva viseshatma prema suramsu samya bhak uchibis chitta marshnya krid aso bhava uchate. This is from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 131. When devotional service is executed on the transcendental platform of pure goodness, It is like a ray of sun of love of Krishna. Such a time devotional service causes the heart to be softened by various tastes, and one is then situated in bhava, emotion. So in other words, it's saying, when you get out of the modes of nature, you come to the Shuddha Sattva platform, and that's where you experience your relationship with Krishna, and that's where the heart softens. And this example is given in Shastra of a heart being like gold, because gold is a soft metal, or the heart being like butter, easily melted. And the other examples are the heart is like steel. So I chant Hare Krishna, I don't experience anything because my heart is like steel, or like sometimes we say stone-hearted. So on the stage of bhava, you're no longer stone-hearted, you're golden-hearted or butter-hearted. And so when you have a butter heart, everything about Krishna, in this example, Krishna is like fire. So if you put gold in fire, it easily melts. If you put butter in fire, it easily melts. So, but when you put stone or steel in fire, it doesn't easily melt. So when you have a steel heart or a stone heart, that you come in contact with Krishna, there may not be much going on. But on the stage of bhava, because the heart is soft, no longer under the influence of the modes of nature, now when you come in contact with Krishna, the heart starts melting. The heart starts melting, and then it manifests ecstatic symptoms. And that's the analogy. That makes sense? Soft heart melts, and Krishna is the melting factor, his name, his pastimes, his service, and so forth. And so the same name, the same service, has a different effect on different people, because the nature of their heart. The nature of their heart is based on the nature of their advancement, where they're situated and what level of Krishna consciousness they are. So the more they advance, the more they're moved. So as we discussed initially, the moving might just be steadiness, or the moving might be taste. They really like it. They like to hear, like to chant. Or it might be attraction. You become extremely attracted. And then in this stage, the moving is the ecstasy. So we're being moved, but now, being free from the modes of nature, we're really being moved. And we're being moved so much that the body is manifesting ecstatic symptoms, shivering, hair standing on end, choking, because it's so intense. There's nothing blocking it. There's no modes of nature getting in the way, nullifying it, camouflaging it, polluting it, contaminating it. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, ask a question. Because there's no people here, so I can... In all the previous classes, I couldn't do your questions because there were so many devotees asking questions. So now you have it all to yourself, so you can ask questions. The first line of the above verse describes the primary characteristics of ecstatic devotion. Quote, when devotional service is executed on the transcendental platform of pure goodness, it is like a sun ray of love of Krishna. So it's just, what bhava is that stage when you first get out of the modes of nature. And now it's kind of, if you wanted a visual of it, you're driving on the road, and you're just driving up the mountain, and you get to the top, and now you get the first glimpse of the sun. It's just, or the sun's just coming over the mountain. So it's the first glimpse, it's the first ray of love. Devotees should not confuse pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva, with the material mode of goodness, Sattva Guna. Pure goodness is the spiritual or internal potency by which the Supreme Lord Vasudeva appears in his transcendental form. Pure goodness is comprised of the essence of the potencies by which Krishna maintains the spiritual world. Sandhini Shakti gives spiritual knowledge. Wait. No. The potencies by which the potency that Krishna maintains in the material world is called Sandhini, existence. Knowledge, Samvit, and pleasure potency, Ladini. So these are, as I mentioned, these are the three potencies that comprise Krishna's Swarup Shakti, his internal potency. Swarup means his own form. When pure goodness reflects off the mirror of external energy, It is tainted and known as matter, known as the material mode of goodness, which comprises the material counterparts of the above-mentioned three spiritual potencies. And because the three modes of material nature always coexist, material goodness always mixes to some extent with passion and ignorance. In short, pure goodness is transcendental, material goodness is mundane. So, pure goodness is called Shuddha Sattva, reflection of it is called Sattva. And what's being explained here is that when you're in the material world, pure goodness, if you're, let's say you're in Sattva Guna, but it's impossible or unlikely to be only in Sattva Guna, because in the material world we're associated with the other modes of nature. So, being associated with the other modes of nature, passion and ignorance will always have some effect, and therefore we can't be purely in the mode of goodness. So, Shuddha Sattva means we're transcendental, and because we're transcendental, there's no material modes, and therefore then there's pure spiritual energy. But in the material world, even in Sattva Guna, it'll be infected by Rajas and Tamas. Jiva Goswami stresses that the use of the words Shuddha Sattva and Visesha highlights the importance of the cognitive Samvit and pleasure-giving Ladini potencies, respectively. Jiva Goswami's commentary to Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu. So what does that mean? The cognitive potency empowers devotees with a full understanding of all truths related to Krishna. By that potency's grace, conclusive truths can appear in the hearts of even illiterate devotees who have no access to Scripture. So we read this last time. This is very interesting. In other words, what he's saying is that the modes of nature cover us. So when you get out of the modes of nature and you enter into the pure spiritual realm, there's no ignorance. So therefore, it's not a question of how many books you've read, or it's not a question of what you've understood or realized up to that point. But when you become transcendental, or you enter into that spiritual potency, everything is revealed. There's no ignorance there, so you know everything. Which is an interesting state to be in, isn't it? A state where you know everything. Anyway, you understand, as we said, you understand your relationship with Krishna. You understand who you are, who he is. You understand the modes of nature. You understand everything. So, Haroksha just says, some devotees are considered very grave and they do not succumb to spiritual ecstasies so quickly, whereas immature devotees are keen to experience ecstasy immediately. So is this a question of choice or, see more, I'll press the see more button, or are some devotees just that way inclined? Well, Prabhupada set the example, and Prabhupada always told us that devotees do not externally manifest ecstasies. So, if they are, it would either be they're very advanced and it got out of control, or they're just not very advanced and they're basically not controlling themselves. Or they're trying to show off. Anyway, it was very rare that Prabhupada exhibited any ecstatic symptoms. And when he did, he apologized. So apologizing for exhibiting ecstatic symptoms, I think it answers the question, doesn't it? And to perform on the stage of Bhava and then to exhibit ecstatic symptoms is bogus, because you don't have them. Now, if you're dancing in a kirtan, you feel blissful, that's one thing. If you start banging your head on the wall, rolling on the ground, screaming, that is not right. It's artificial. And there's no point to it. In other words, the ecstasies enhance the rasa. They're not done for showing off. Nicholas says, does this mean that Raja and Tamaguna will act on us up to the point of love of Godhead, act on us up to the point of bhava, which is the beginning of love of Godhead. Yeah. But they'll act less. The more you advance, they'll act less and less. So as you go through each stage of devotional service, lower modes are acting on you less and less until you come to the stage of bhava, where they don't exist anymore in that stage. So even before you're on the stage of bhava, they won't, even on the stage of nishta, they lose their effectiveness. But as you advance beyond nishta, beyond anartha nivritti, the modes of nature are more subdued. They won't be as strong and they won't last as long. When you're younger in Krishna consciousness, you can be in Maya for days. When you're older, it would only last 30 seconds. Just a thought. See, that's the difference. And then, when you evolve further, there is no thought. There is no Maya. Does that make sense? What you say in Hokshaja, immature devotees are keen to experience ecstasy. The thing is, devotees don't experience ecstasy to enjoy it. It's a product of their attraction to Krishna. And we know that if the ecstasy gets in the way, then they will shun off the ecstasy because it gets in the way of their service. So when we hear these ecstatic symptoms, we might think, oh, that sounds enjoyable. I'd like to experience that. But it's not that the devotee is trying to experience it. It's just an experience of an intense attraction and attachment to Krishna. And those experiences help the relationship. So that's why you would want to experience it, to enhance your service, enhance your affection. Because at that stage, there's no question of enjoying. You say, you enjoy the ecstasy. It's not the way it works. In that stage, you don't have the desire to enjoy. You have a very strong desire to serve. So, you have to understand that, otherwise you misunderstand the whole topic. So, we're talking about the samvit potency and the ladini potency, the knowledge and pleasure potency. The cognitive potency empowers devotees with a full understanding of all truths related to Krishna. For that potency's grace, conclusive truths can appear in the hearts of even illiterate devotees who have no access to Scripture. The pleasure-giving potency then empowers such devotees with tender and deep emotions saturated with feelings of possessiveness towards Krishna. So, all these emotions are just manifestations of attraction to Krishna and attachment. That's what they are. They're not, as I'm saying, they're not forms of material enjoyment. And so then what's saying here is that when a devotee is in this stage experiencing these ecstasies, he becomes possessive. And the symptom of love of Krishna is possessiveness. Krishna is mine. That's how he feels. Lower stages, he feels, I am Krishna's. In this stage, he starts to feel Krishna is mine. It's a higher stage. And that's symptomatic of the stage of bhava. The pleasure-giving potency then empowers such devotees with tender and deep emotions saturated with feelings of possessiveness. So, the ladini potency, the pleasure-giving potency, is responsible for all these emotions. The samvit, the knowledge potency, is responsible for the devotee understanding their rasa and understanding everything they need to understand. So that's just how those potencies work. Just as the modes of nature work to cover us, these modes have the spiritual modes. These are samvit, ladini, shaktis, and samvit shaktis are the counterparts of the three modes of nature. And so they work to enrich our bhakti, just as the modes of nature, material modes of nature, work to cover our bhakti. So just as now we're bound by the modes of nature, Wouldn't it be nice to be bound by these three spiritual energies? Wouldn't that be cool? And you're just being pushed around by spiritual energy? That would be great. I'm looking forward to it. How about you? Right? If I could buy a ticket, I'd go there now. No three modes of nature. Would you like to go to a theme park? You walk in the theme park and there's no three modes of material nature? Only the Swarup Shakti of Krishna? That would be amazing. Wouldn't it? I think so. You want to go? These emotions include all forms of love of Godhead, up to and including the topmost stage of sublime ecstasy, Mahabhav. These higher states do not manifest themselves at the level of ecstatic devotion, but are present in seed form. So what's being explained here is we have bhava, which is the beginning of love, and then we have prema. And so there are some emotions that are only in seed form in bhava, and then they manifest at the stage of prema. And the emotions that are manifest in bhava, when you get to prema, they intensify and they expand. Let's say, for example, they're shivering, so now there's more intense shivering, and it expands, so the whole body's shivering. Maybe just your hands were shivering. Now your whole body's shivering. You can imagine, you're going from bhava to prema, it's intensifying, so the emotions are intensifying. And then there are certain emotions that will only come out on the stage of prema. But they're called Asta-sattvika bhava, these eightfold. So it's just a continuation into prema, and in prema they intensify. And you could say that they will intensify as you progress in bhava, because as you become more, as your love for Krishna increases, then the emotions around that love intensify, which is also true materially, isn't it? Am I losing anybody? Are we okay? Okay. I mean, I'm trying to make it as simple as I can. But, obviously, we don't have this experience. We only have like shadow experience of this. So we have to go on our shadow experience. And we have some material experience, because material world is a reflection. So you have experience of very intense emotions materially. But you can just imagine when applied to Krishna, they're many, many more times intense. And they don't have all the material inebrities, the material stuff that goes with it. I was going to use a slang word, the material that goes along with it. But you know what I mean. So it's if you have these emotions materially and in the material world, love in its pure form is so filled with the inebrities of lust and personal needs, then you can imagine the intensity in the stage of bhava when there's only Krishna, then how intense that must be. There's no inebrities. Whereas some people say inebrieties. I don't know how you say it in Australia, but I'll find out when I go there. You can tell me. The devotees can then, let's read the last sentence. At the stage of bhava, however, this difference ceases to exist, and both the devotees and Krishna are on the same spiritual... These higher states do not manifest themselves at the level of ecstatic devotion, but are present in seed form. So these are higher states of ecstasy. The combined effect of the cognitive and pleasure-giving potencies is wonderful. So cognitive means Samvit Shakti, I know everything, and Ladini Shakti, I'm experiencing ecstatic emotions. Before devotees attain the stage of ecstatic devotion, they are situated differently than the Lord. They are on the material platform, and their objects of affection, and the object of affection is Krishna. We read this also, but we'll read it again. Krishna is on the spiritual platform. They are on the material. So when we're in the modes of nature, Krishna is transcendental. Krishna is in a different neighborhood than we are. We're in the neighborhood on the other side of the railroad tracks, and Krishna is in the high-end neighborhood. So we're living in different neighborhoods. We live in different worlds. We're in different places. At the stage of bhava, however, this difference ceases to exist, and both the devotees and Krishna are on the same spiritual level of pure goodness. So now we're living in the same neighborhood. The devotees can then fully understand the Lord's name, form, quality, paraphernalia, and entourage, because the curtain of diluting energy no longer separates them from the Lord and his internal energies. So when the curtain of diluting energy is pulled, then there's nothing the devotee doesn't understand. Question. You said that if we're not mad for Krishna, then we'll be mad for something else. Yeah, like iPhone 7. I'm mad for that iPhone 7. You know, if I had an iPhone 7, it would be so much easier to broadcast than on this iPad Air. Do you know that? I dream about it day and night. That's all I think about is an iPhone 7. That's all I want. And I can tell you other things I'm mad about, that I think about them all the time. Right? Now maybe you're not mad for an iPhone 7, but if you read enough ads about iPhone 7, ads will make you mad for it, if you're susceptible to ads. And if you see a beautiful girl and you want to have her, you'll become mad for her. Definitely. So if we're not mad for Krishna, then we're mad for something. We're always mad after something, so when we make the leap from material to spiritual madness, how can we develop enough spiritual madness to keep us from our material madness? Well, you know, in the beginning stage, you're probably going to have to go through a little of both. But the thing is, at least now you understand the material madness is a dead end. And at least you understand that if you're too attached to something material that can't be used for Krishna, that you're mad. So that's a stage of advancement, right? At least you know you're mad. Before you were a devotee, you may not have known it. You know, the answer to this question is interesting, because part of the answer is that there are a lot of things we have to tolerate in Krishna consciousness until we're Krishna conscious. So part of the answer is, what were you saying? How can we develop enough spiritual madness? You may not be able to tomorrow, right? So the answer is how? Keep doing what you're doing and just do it better, or do more of it. And until you develop spiritual madness, or what we mean by spiritual madness is strong attachment to that anything spiritual, you need a lot of tolerance. That's just the reality of where we're at. When we don't have Krishna and we want Krishna, we need tolerance, right? So what do we do in the interim? Tolerate. Tolerate the mind, tolerate the senses, tolerate the impatience that I'm experiencing. Tolerate what I can't tolerate. That's the idea. Does that make sense? It's like, you can't just jump into another stage that you're not on. So you have to patiently await that time and you come to the next stage. Becoming mad after Krishna is just a natural process. It may not manifest as actual madness, but it'll manifest as like a madness, as we say, I'm mad about you, I'm mad about chanting, I'm mad about reading. It just means I love it. And I think about it all the time. I love to do it. So, does that make sense to you? You may not, you can't force that attraction. All you can do is do the process, and the attraction will arise. And to the degree that it doesn't arise, to that degree you tolerate, knowing that it will arise. If I stick to the process, then I know it's going to arise, so I just stick to it. That's the idea. And there's really nothing else you can do. It's like you're on a long bus ride. What can you do? You can't get out and do something else. You just have to tolerate the bus ride till you get there. There's no air conditioning. It's hot. What can you do? Tolerate. It's cold outside. There's no heat. What can you do? Tolerate. The bus got a flat tire. What are we going to do now? Tolerate. It's like asking a question like that. What am I going to do now that the bus has a flat tire? You're not going to do anything. You're just going to wait till they get a new tire. So what do I do now when I'm not Krishna conscious? You just keep practicing it and tolerating your lack of Krishna consciousness. There's nothing else you can do. Right? Anything else would not help you. Of course, you can pray to be Krishna conscious. Anything. You do anything that will help you. Krishna Govinda. You do anything that will help you, and then I read this thing once. You need patience. When you have patience, you still need patience to remain patient. To be patient while you're... Patience means you can wait, and then you need patience while you're waiting. So many places Prabhupada talks about patience. This is the reason he talks about it. This very question you're asking is the reason he talks about patience. It's like, what do I do when I don't have it? Nothing. Just keep doing the process. And someday you'll get it. And you can't do anything about not having it other than just doing the process. You see, that question would apply well to something material. If I'm not doing something material well, how can I improve it? And you can read books about how you can improve it. But in Krishna consciousness, it's not exactly like that. I'm on this level, how can I improve it? Keep doing what you're doing. Or do more of what you're doing. Or do it better. And there's not like secret formulas. You have to get the latest book on becoming Krishna conscious, and then you'll figure it out. No, you just have to do what you're doing, do more of it, and do it better. And patiently wait for the result. Because you can't force the result. Right? Something material, in a sense, you can force the result. Because you follow a certain process, you do it well, and you'll get the result. Or you'll make sure you get the result. Nicholas says, the senses are eating me alive. It's a bit hard to tolerate. But yeah, there's nothing else I can do till I'm more advanced. Well, maybe part of the problem is your senses need to be engaged in something that's really inspiring you. So if your senses are just idle, that is a problem. So try to engage in some service that inspires you so that you can utilize your senses so they don't eat you alive when your senses are too busy. Yeah, you have to have service. And it's nice to have service that you look forward to. It's so important. If you have a lot of free time, that's dangerous. So you should have some service that you can do at the temple or do at home. It's nice to have service at home. Always keep you busy. And service keeps us out of trouble. Right? Yes. If your senses are eating you alive, they have to be engaged. So if you have too much time on your hands, that's not good. Right? There's another thing about tolerating the senses. You see, the thing is, if you give in to your senses, they become stronger. If you tolerate them, you don't give in, they become weaker. So if you don't give in long enough, they'll kind of just die out a bit. So that's an important principle. So while you're patiently waiting, you're actually purifying your senses because you're not indulging them. So they're becoming weaker. Okay. Gauraga Nityananda. Thakur Bhaktivinoda says that when devotees leave the realm of devotional service and practice and approach the realm of ecstatic devotion, they abandon all false designations pertaining to the body, although they have not yet attained their spiritual forms. Because the living beings are quantitatively insignificant, however, there is a risk that in such a state, short of material identity, devotees may succumb to the desire to annihilate their individuality. To protect devotees from the desire to merge into impersonal Brahman, the pleasure-giving potency embraces him, transforms their devotion from that of practice into that of ecstasy, and gives them a taste of their spiritual identity. It's all done by the pleasure-giving potency. Emboldened by newfound strength, devotees leave behind any thoughts of Brahma Jyoti, plunge into the world of pure goodness. That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. To protect devotees from the desire to merge into the impersonal Brahman, pleasure-giving potency embraces him, transforms their devotion from practice to that of ecstasy, gives them a taste of their spiritual identity. So that's all being done by the internal potency. So I think we talked about this last time. The chances of falling into impersonal understanding are always there, and that's being described even here from the stage of bhava. It's possible. And it's possible because impersonalism is it's like the most subtle aspects of material consciousness. Not subtle. It's the grossest aspects, but in subtle form. So, Prabhupada's mercy, we're not really plagued in our movement by impersonalism. But it's all around us, it's all out there, so Prabhupada preached very strongly against it because it's so pervading. And it's so destructive to one's spiritual life that it destroys a person's relationship with Krishna. If you make Krishna impersonal, then there's no relationship. And we're existing to awaken our loving relationship with Krishna. And now, if you become an impersonalist, you destroy your relationship. The very thing that life is meant for, you don't get it. So, Prabhupada is very strong against impersonalism, especially Mayavad. Okay. You can read a little bit more. There's 2 more paragraphs in this section. The influence of ecstatic devotion is so profound that it even colors the consciousness of Krishna's eternal companions, who have fully spiritual bodies. To give a crude example, just as a lusty man sees all women as object of his lust, the Vrajavasis see Krishna everywhere and in all things. Such ecstatic emotions, which reside eternally in the Vrajavasis, shine into the hearts of qualified devotees and empower them with the sprout of love of God. Ecstatic devotion then transforms and molds the devotees according to its will. So, it's being said here, when you come to the stage of bhava where your love begins, you'll see Krishna everywhere, and that's a symptom of love. You think of your lover everywhere, and you see them everywhere. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena. So you start seeing Krishna everywhere when you love him. And then, love means see Krishna everywhere. When you don't love Krishna, you don't see him anywhere. Isn't it? So, it's an interesting definition. When you love Krishna, you see him in everything. And when you don't love him, you see everything except him. You don't see him anywhere. And anything you love, you see, you notice. This is the way it goes. So there's the last paragraph in this section. Still, the appearance of pure goodness in ecstatic devotion is partial, not complete. Rupa Goswami uses the word angsu or ray to denote the extent to which pure goodness appears in bhava. Love of Godhead, prema, the full manifestation of pure goodness, is like the sun. When a single but fully potent ray of the Krishna sun touches a devotee's heart, ecstatic devotion instantly becomes manifest. Just as a spark falling onto dry leaves quickly grows into a forest fire, one ray of pure goodness entering a devotee's heart quickly flares into a blaze of love of Godhead. So it's what's saying that one ray is so powerful that it's just amazing what it will do. One ray, you manifest ecstatic devotion. Like a little spark falls on some grass and turns into a forest fire. So one ray of love of Krishna can spark a forest fire of love for Krishna. So it's so valuable. So I thought we could end here because we finished this second section. And you have anyone else have any other questions or comments? Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Yeah. Now, you might feel some of these. You might sometimes have a little sense of these feelings. That's possible, but it's not the stage of bhava, fully manifest. But whenever we're feeling very ecstatic in Krishna consciousness, it is a manifestation of bhava, but just not on a fully matured level. Right? Okay, so I think we can officially end now, right? Is that okay? All right. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next Saturday. Well, actually, we'll see you tonight. 7 o'clock Indian time, we're going to give a class on self-love and just the problems that can come from denigrating and berating ourselves and how that relates to Krishna consciousness. So if you, I guess in Australia it'll be too late, but if you're elsewhere, 7 o'clock Indian time is pretty good for everyone west of India, anyway. Okay? Thank you all. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.